A very warm welcome to Rwanda Television News with me, Gloria Mutesi. We'll start off tonight's bulletin by telling you that the Ministry of Education has announced school year calendar 2020-2021 for basic education and TVET schools. Term 2 for such schools will run from the 2nd of November 2020 to the 2nd of April 2021, and this applies to primary 5 and 6 pupils, S3, S5 and S6. Those in primary 4, S1, 2 and 4 will begin their studies on the 23rd of November this year and end the term on the 2nd of April next year as well. Term 3 will start on the 19th of April 2021 and end on the 9th of July 2021. Rwanda's senators have noted the use of things like ankle monitors and community service as alternatives to prison incarcerations as a way of reducing overcrowding in the country's prisons after a report cited overcrowding in some prisons. As such reports, overcrowding in the country's prisons increased by 25% in the last 5 years.
A report by Rwanda's National Commission for Human Rights has detailed how in the last 5 years, overcrowding in the country's prisons increased by 25% from 99% in 2014-2015 to an alarming 124% in 2018-2019. Inquiries made by the Senate's Committee on Social Affairs, Human Rights and Petitions found that out of the country's 14 prisons, the one at Rwanda is the most affected by overcrowding, at a shocking 256% above design capacity. Putting 100 people in a place designed for 50 is a problem. Why are you not even curious to find out the consequences of overcrowding? And this concerns inmates and prison administrators alike on the use of their available infrastructure, things like bathrooms, toilets, or whatever. The senators also pointed out that such overcrowding is a burden to the government, which has taken steps over the years to deal with the problem, implementing measures like provisional releases for 4,263 prisoners between 2014 and 2018 and 116 presidential pardons between 2011 and 2019. However, in 2018-2019, an additional 71,000 people ended up in Rwanda's prison system that was not supposed to take in more than 57,000. Senators have therefore noted that the use of things like ankle monitors and community service as alternatives to prison incarcerations as a way of reducing overcrowding in the country's prisons are things that should be promoted. The issue of the general public believing that only prison terms can be considered as sufficient punishment has also been pointed out as needing addressing through sensitization efforts. The Senate General Assembly called for measures to deal with overcrowding to be sped up, and the issue is bound to be raised again when the National Commission for Human Rights presents its 2019-2020 report to both chambers of parliament on Wednesday.
The government of Rwanda has confirmed that medical cannabis will be planted in Rwanda legally. This is in order to help the pharmaceutical industry and increase the size of the export economy. A plant approved by the cabinet meeting on Monday, cannabis is widely used in medicine and in the pharmaceutical industries and contributes greatly to economies of many countries around the world. Rwanda's Minister of Health, Dr. Daniel Ngamije, explained the benefits of growing this plant in Rwanda, especially in the medical field.
From tea to coffee, all these are plants that are exported, and they are able to be some sort of remedies to various diseases. So the same thing applies to this plant called cannabis. It is going to be planted in a safe way. Even those that are allowed to grow it will have to apply and be given a go-ahead to do so, and grow it in a known place and then export so that the pharmaceutical industry can meet its needs.
While Rwanda aims to increase agricultural exports to $1 billion by 2024 from the $465 million the country collected last year in this regard, the CEO of the Rwanda Development Board, Claire Akamanzi, says cannabis cultivation is an opportunity both in investment and in job creation.
Some of these crops have a value of, you can get up to $10 million from 1 hectare of production. I mean, if you compare that to roses, flowers, for example, if you grow flowers on a hectare, you expect to make $300,000. And this, you can go up to $10 million. It's a huge difference. So economically, it's potentially good for the country. And also, of course, jobs. We expect this industry to create hundreds and thousands of jobs as well if it goes well. And of course, we also expect taxes and hopefully other types of levies for money to come back to the treasury. So I see those as the main benefits: the health benefit, the economic benefit, and the employment benefit.
The cannabis plant is considered to be one of the plants with high economic value in the world in the coming years. Some countries such as the United States and Canada have started making use of the plant. And in the state of Colorado only, cannabis cultivation employed 18,000 people and $50 million in profits in 2018. And it is while in general the country earns $6.7 billion per year from the cannabis crop. Well, still on the same topic, earlier today, the CEO of the Rwanda Development Board, Claire Akamanzi, spoke to RBA's Ethan Tashobia about why Rwanda approved the growing of this controversial crop.
CEO RDB, Claire Akamanzi, many thanks for finding time to speak to us here on RwandaTV News.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Yes. Well, there's much to talk about. Cabinet resolution approving the regulatory guideline on cultivation, processing, and export of high-value therapeutic crop in Rwanda. First of all, why at this time?
Well, first of all, it's true that yesterday the Cabinet of Rwanda approved new guidelines for the cultivation, processing, and export of high-value therapeutic crops. And your question about why now? The reason for that is that we've seen globally there is a very growing and interesting medical research on the use of certain therapeutic crops or the components from those crops that can support development of medicine. And so when we see what's happening globally, many countries are more and more going into approve of medicinal, strictly medicinal cultivation of these crops to support this medical research and hopefully get better and even more useful drugs to fight diseases. What we've seen, for example, is that some of these therapeutic crops can be used to alleviate the impact of vomiting or nausea for people that have cancer or even HIV/AIDS. And so if you can develop medicine that can support that, and it's a growing trend, it's a growing industry, and it's also one that can bring income and revenues to the country, can create jobs. It's very timely, and Rwanda doesn't want to miss on this important, growing, useful industry, not just for revenues, but also for supporting medicine.
But how do we draw a difference between being a therapeutic crop and being an illicit drug?
Well, first of all, medicinal research has protocols around it. It has to be done by people that are licensed to do medicine-related therapeutic crops. So if you're not licensed to do medical research, not anybody is a pharmaceutical company, and not everybody is developing products of pharmaceutical plants. So it's a very highly licensed and regulated industry, because we don't want it to be abused. We don't want it to be used for wrong purposes. We want it to be used strictly for medicinal research. And so it's really about regulatory, strong regulatory framework, very strong security around how the crops are grown. And maybe I could just talk a little bit about how we're thinking about these regulations in Rwanda. Please. Not only are we regulating how you import the materials for planting, whether it's seeds or others, we are regulating how you cultivate these crops. We are regulating the whole process of how you handle post-harvesting, how you ensure quality of the product, the temperature, the storage, the waste disposal. All that is part of the regulatory framework, but also the security. If you get licensed to grow these therapeutic crops in Rwanda, you will be required to have in place a very strong security program that has to be approved by our security organs. And that security program is going to be highly implemented, which means that there will be no way that it can leak outside the farm to go to the domestic market or for wrong users. The crops will be in a very designated place. There will be very strong measures, whether it's CCTV cameras, watchtowers, street lights, security, human security. And so it's going to be extremely secure, and the security is going to be really strong, just to make sure that these crops are not going outside the farm to the local market. That is not going to be possible at all, because we put in place a very strong security, so that the products that come from these crops are strictly going to the production of medicine and for pharmaceutical products, and they're going outside the country just for exports.
Still on that, on regulation, so you know who is going to be growing this and at what scale already?
So RwandaTV, together with other government organizations, has been working, especially FDA, has been working with potential investors in this area, because we saw it's a new industry, and as our job within the Rwanda Development Board, we have to keep looking for new opportunities for the country and to keep making Rwanda attractive for business. And in fact, if you look at what we're offering these kinds of investors, it's a very, very good, secure environment, very attractive business environment, very strong infrastructure. And so we're very competitive for this kind of investments. And so we've been not only following what's happening globally, we've been doing our own research, but we've also been talking to potential investors. And yes, we do have interested investors that we are going to be working with over the next few days, now that we have guidelines in place, to see how Rwanda can contribute to the production of medicinal research and crops in the world.
Potential markets?
Well, US is a big market. European Union is another market. I think those are probably the two biggest markets that we're seeing buying products, and Canada, of course, North America, US and Canada, and also European Union. So we're going to be looking very closely at whether we can participate in these markets. But again, very important to say, we're contributing to medicinal research and absolutely not going to allow any other use, recreation, or any use outside medicinal research. Absolutely not.
So we should not expect any drug abuse cases increasing? No,
we're not going to. Once we give licenses to this use of medicinal high-value crops, it's absolutely not going to be used for anything else, and it's not going to be used outside the designated and licensed area, because there's going to be very high security, as I say.
But if you could tell us more on terms of revenues and all that, what are expectations, from the government?
First of all, the most important benefit that the government of Rwanda sees in participating in this kind of medicinal research is the impact on human lives. If this research and these crops are done to what we see the world is driving towards, it will contribute to reducing the impact of cancer and other diseases that are relying on these kinds of medicine. So the first important benefit that we see as a country is our contribution to the health and medicinal or pharmaceutical research in the world. But the second one, there are also economic benefits for us. If you look at the kind of revenues that we expect to get from some of these crops that might be licensed to be grown in Rwanda, some of these crops have a value of, you can get up to $10 million from 1 hectare of production. I mean, if you compare that to roses, flowers, for example, if you grow flowers on a hectare, you expect to make $300,000. And this, you can go up to $10 million. It's a huge difference. So economically, it's potentially good for the country. And also, of course, jobs. We expect this industry to create hundreds and thousands of jobs as well if it goes well. And of course, we also expect taxes and hopefully other types of levies for money to come back to the treasury. So I see those as the main benefits: the health benefit, the economic benefit, and the employment benefit.
Any designated place to grow this crop?
We're looking at some places in the country that can be designated because we want to make sure that it's very highly licensed and highly secure. Not anyone can grow it anywhere. And if anyone tries to grow it without being licensed, of course, the law will catch up with them. And so we have very specific places that we will be working with investors to designate this kind of strictly medicinal and research for pharmaceutical industry.
You can't reveal the places?
No, we're still working on those places. I've been seeing people ask about why are we only exporting it and why are we not...
exactly, for local use, locally.
For today, the decision that we've made is that everything that will be produced for medicinal research will be exported and not utilized in the country, because we still don't have the capacity for pharmaceutical development and research that can use these kind of crops today. And so until we develop the industry in Rwanda and there's pharmaceutical capacity to do this kind of medicine development, we will have to export. But who knows, in the future, those kinds of industries might come in the country, and that might be able to use these kind of crops in the country. But for today, we don't have that capacity, and that's why we're starting with just exports.
What else should we know about this regulation?
What else should you know about this regulation? I think maybe something important to say is that the regulation is also going to clarify the process of how you get a license. Mostly you apply for it from FDA. RDB will deal with investors who are interested, but the licensing authority is going to be FDA. And you have to apply for a license to import planting materials and a permit for every consignment. You have to get a license to process and a license to export. And every time you want to export, you have to get a permit for every consignment. So that's the licensing structure that is there. But again, this is something that RDB, Government of Rwanda, FDA, we want to contribute to this growing global trend, and we're very excited to see how we can contribute to it.
Claire Kamanzi, CEO RDB, many thanks for your time indeed.
Welcome.
I appreciate it.
It sparked a debate, but there you have it. Now, in other news, Rwanda Utilities and Regulatory Authority has announced that as per Cabinet Communique dated 12th of October 2020 regarding public transport services, the guidelines will take effect from Thursday, the 15th of October 2020 after the review of fares and COVID-19 preventive measures. Fiona Mbabazi has more.
The Cabinet Communique dated 12th October 2020 announced that public transport will resume full handling of passengers at 100%. This was well received by citizens who, by early morning, were ready to kick off the day in a normal manner of sitting before COVID-19. However, they all called for the streamlining of the fares. I heard that we are now resuming the full capacity sitting. But what made me happier is that the fares will be revised, because as of now from Kigali to Mugonero we paid 5,100, yet before we paid 3,500.
From Nyabugogo to Kabuga, we pay 750. We are calling on the reduction of prices, as you can see now that we will be sitting 2 people per seat.
On the other hand, however, the passengers say that they will not slow down in taking precautionary measures against COVID-19. We will keep wearing our face masks correctly and keep our safety guard up.
We have to wash our hands thoroughly with soap and water and wear our face masks correctly.
Rwanda Utility Regulatory Authority, RURA, has announced that prices and fares are under review and will be announced by Thursday the 15th.
It is important that we review and reduce the fare for the citizens, and by Thursday this week, we will have the new prices. The passengers must wear their face masks correctly all through the journey, and they should wash their hands first. We have also called on those with private cars to ensure that their windows are open to properly air the vehicle.
RURA says they will continue to work closely with other sectors to ensure that all preventive measures are up to par.
Well, still on COVID-19 related matters, Rwanda today registered 3 new people that tested positive for the coronavirus among the 1,884 tests that were conducted today. A significant number of recoveries today was recorded. 253 people recovered from the coronavirus. Active cases are now 746. Among the positive cases identified today, 1 is from Kigali, 1 from Nyagatare, and 1 from Rubavu districts. The Ministry of Education urges it wishes to instill the discipline of students learning various languages at a younger stage, including French. The Minister of State for Primary and Secondary Education at the Ministry of Education, Twagirayezu Gaspar, said the teachers for the French language need to be trained highly for them to aid students right from primary schools.
Honestly, that is a language that is used in teaching. But we want that French also becomes a crucial language in our curriculum, because we want students to be able to speak English, Kinyarwanda, French, Kiswahili, and other languages, so that students are educated in sciences, but can also express themselves in other languages.
The first batch of 30 teachers of French in Africa is being trained by Juliette Bigor, the advisor for Cooperation and Culture Action at the French Embassy, who pledges her country's cooperation in finding all the necessary resources to make the French language teaching easier and more effective in as many institutions as possible.
Par exemple, en tout début d'année, nous avons doté le Rwanda Education Board d'un certain nombre d'ouvrages.
For example, at the start, we will work with the Rwanda Education Board to find textbooks that have illustrated stories, and students will be given the opportunity to speak French. Basically, teachers will use all the means to make the students become familiar with the language, make students participate in games and other things that will make it easy for the students to combine it with Kinyarwanda and other languages. That is why we planned to first train the teachers.
Donc il faut essayer d'attirer, de rester très attractif. Donc on va essayer de... Enfin, en tout cas, nous, c'est comme ça qu'on a proposé les formations de cette semaine. Et
The Rwanda Education Board, the French Embassy, and the OIF are training some teachers of French across Africa so that they will contribute to the teaching of French with new teaching methodologies, and this will even be extended to teacher training centers. Now, the Rwanda National Police has paraded 5 men suspected of impersonating authorities with the objective of extorting citizens of their money, as well as 8 taxi motorcyclists who are riding around with partially concealed number plates and trying to get away with traffic violations. Sejnore has more.
The 5 men apparently took on the identities of police officers, agents of the Rwanda Investigation Bureau, the Office of the Prosecutor General, as well as the Auditor General, all with the help of a real policeman. Their objective was to steal from a businessman by accusing him of using falsified documents while applying for a public tender, threatening him with fines and imprisonment if he did not bribe them to make it all go away. I realized that if I refused to give them the money, they would probably kill me because I had seen their faces, and so I decided to negotiate with them on how much I should pay and told them that 3 million Rwandan francs was too much, that I could only get 500,000. And the man who was calling himself the team leader, saying he was from RIB, said it was an insult to even insinuate that they would share just 500,000 Rwandan francs. The one with the yellow shirt had told me that he works at the Auditor General's office, and the policeman they were with confirmed it, saying 500,000 is too little. That another one of them, who was wearing army fatigues, is paid 2 million Rwandan francs. Olivier finally settled for 1 million Rwandan francs with the conmen and paid them in installments, working with real agents from the Rwanda Investigation Bureau to have them arrested with 400,000 Rwandan francs left to be paid. All 5 men, that include a real policeman and a former teacher, have admitted to their crimes. I got the title indicating that I was part of the staff at the Auditor General's office right there, and that is how I started claiming to work there. I now realize the seriousness of my crime, that of impersonating an official, and urge anyone thinking of doing such things not to. I have learned that it is not good to be careless on the job. Any job. It does not have to be that of being a policeman. As a person, you must think carefully before acting. 8 taxi motorcyclists who are riding around with partially concealed number plates and trying to get away with traffic violations were also paraded following their arrest. I had put something on the number plate of my motorcycle that partially conceals it. I was wrong to do that, and I asked for forgiveness because doing so was breaking road safety regulations and a problem when police personnel were trying to stop me. Police officials say the men who impersonated public servants are facing serious charges in addition to impersonation. Kidnapping is also included, as you heard, as well as unlawful imprisonment. That is catered for in Article 151. The crimes they are accused of could land them in prison for up to 7 years. The important message is this: there are people out there who could go around impersonating officials in order to swindle others. When a person claims to work for a certain institution, you should be careful and check their credentials thoroughly. as well as their behavior to see if their actions really conform to what is legally acceptable. If anything is amiss, then seek clarifications. The Rwanda National Police is warning all motorists against any attempts at concealing their number plates, saying such vehicles will be considered to be used for illegal activities when caught.
You're still watching Rwanda Television News. The Speaker in the Chamber of Deputies of Rwanda's Parliament, Honorable Donatil Mukabalisa, and the Benin Speaker of Parliament, Louis G. Vlavonu, have held discussions on bilateral cooperation and the role of both parliaments in the development of their respective people. Jane Mutoni has more.
The Speaker of Chamber of Deputies of the Parliament of Rwanda, Donatil Mukabalisa, received Benin Speaker Louis G. Vlavonu. He said although the main reason of coming was for work-related matters, paying a visit to the country was also something he was eager to do after hearing many good things about Rwanda.
Recevoir le prix, nous sommes venus 4 jours à l'avant.
We have an hour to receive this evening, and that's why we also decided to come 4 days earlier to pay Rwanda a visit, because we heard it's a beautiful country with good citizens that are orderly, respectful and patriotic. The main reason we came this early in our curiosity to know the source of all these good qualities and then receive our award afterwards. I also wanted to visit my fellow Rwandan speaker due to our shared work nature and good partnership, as we are the voice of our people. Although our countries aren't neighbors, we still carry out trade to enhance the betterment of the people's well-being in both our countries.
Au développement et à la coopération entre nos deux peuples.
Honorable Donatil Mukabalisa says there's a lot the two sides can learn from each other, including fighting corruption.
ngira ngo hari byinshi dushobora kuganira tukagera kuri byinshi twakunguranaho ibitekerezo.
I think we have a lot to discuss and learn from each other concerning the betterment of our people and the development of our countries. Concerning the issue of fighting corruption, we were able to come to an agreement that unchecked corruption can seriously affect the economy of a country and hinder its development. It is the duty of the parliamentarians to ensure that the benefits of the citizens and the country are put first before anything else. Benin and Rwanda enjoy good bilateral relations with trade emphasized. In addition to diplomatic ties, Rwanda has also established an office in Cotonou, Benin's largest city and economic hub, to provide its services across West Africa. Jane Mutoni, reporting for RTV.
Also in the news today, BK Capital, a subsidiary of BK Group, has launched a unit trust fund dubbed Aguka Unit Trust Fund, which has since received a license from the Capital Markets Authority. The fund, which will be an open-ended trust fund, will pool money from investors, invest and manage the money into a diversified portfolio on their behalf, and distribute the profits regularly. Karine Umutoni, the managing director of the BK Capital, says that the fund offerings opens for subscription on the 13th of October 2020. There are no subscription fees to the trust fund, which is open to all members of the public, as well as institutions and the corporates. Investors will also enjoy liquidity with options to redeem their funds within 48 hours. With that, an investor can be able to trade in their units and cash out on request and receive their funds in not more than 48 hours. The fund also promises regular cash flow, with investors receiving predictable distributions or payment of interest at least twice a year. The fund is tax exempt as part of the government's move to encourage an increase in domestic savings through investment funds. Members of the public are invited to invest with the fund by purchasing units valued at 100 Rwanda francs a unit. The minimum value of units one can invest is valued at 100,000 Rwanda francs or 1,000 units. Among the key features of the trust fund, BK Capital said, includes attractive returns, noting that it will offer a yield higher than cash and money markets investments. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Continue to stay safe, and remember, no one is safe until we all are. Otherwise, have a good night and a lovely rest of the week. God bless you and keep you. Until next time, I'm Gloria Mutesi.